I never thought I'd spend my 30th birthday in a 6 by 8 foot cell. But that's exactly where I was, maximum security, convicted felon, 15 years for armed robbery and assault. The kind of sentence that makes people cross the street when they hear your name. The worst part wasn't the bars or the guards or the constant noise that never lets you sleep. The worst part was knowing I was innocent, and that my best friend was the reason I was there. His name was Kevin O'Brien. We'd known each other since 2nd grade. Same neighborhood, same schools, same terrible taste in music during high school. When my dad died junior year, Kevin's family practically adopted me. I was at their dinner table more nights than I was at my own. His mom called me her second son. We went to different colleges but stayed close. He studied accounting. I went into software engineering. After graduation, we both ended up back in Portland. Got an apartment together in Northwest. Spent our 20s doing what people in their 20s do. Working too much, drinking on weekends, talking about the businesses we'd start someday. Kevin got engaged first. Her name was Lauren. She was a kindergarten teacher. Sweet, patient, everything Kevin needed to balance out his nervous energy. I was his best man. Gave a toast that made his mom cry and made Kevin laugh so hard he nearly choked. A year later, I met someone too. Her name was Claire. She worked in marketing at a startup downtown. Smart, funny, always beating me at trivia night. Kevin and Lauren loved her immediately. We did everything as a couple. Dinners, weekend trips to the coast, game nights that got way too competitive. Life was good, really good. I had a solid job at a tech company, a woman I was planning to propose to, and a best friend I'd trust with my life. That trust. That's what destroyed me. It started with a promotion. I got offered a senior engineer position that came with a significant pay increase. The kind of money that meant I could finally buy a ring for Claire, maybe even put a down payment on a house. I was thrilled. Kevin seemed happy for me too. At least that's what I thought at the time. Looking back now, I can see the signs I missed. The way he got quiet when I talked about the new job. How he changed the subject when I mentioned my salary. Little moments of tension that I brushed off because, well, he was Kevin, my brother in everything but blood. 3 months after my promotion, everything changed. It was a Tuesday night in November. I was working late, finishing a project deadline. Around 9 p.m., I finally left the office and headed to my car in the parking garage. I was texting Claire about dinner plans, not paying much attention to my surroundings. That's when 2 police cars pulled up, lights flashing. I remember standing there confused as 4 officers got out, hands on their weapons. One of them shouted at me to get on the ground. I thought it was a mistake, some kind of mix-up. I started to explain that I worked in the building, that my ID was in my pocket. Then I heard the words that would haunt me for years. You're under arrest for armed robbery and assault. You have the right to remain silent. They said I'd robbed a convenience store in southeast Portland 2 nights earlier, Sunday evening around 8 p.m. They said I'd threatened the clerk with a knife, stolen $600 from the register, and when the clerk tried to stop me, I'd put him in the hospital with a fractured skull and broken ribs. I tried to tell them they were wrong. That I'd been at Kevin and Lauren's house on Sunday watching football. That dozens of people could verify I'd never hurt anyone in my life. But they weren't listening. They had me in handcuffs before I could even think straight. The next 72 hours were a nightmare. Jail processing, mugshots, fingerprints. A public defender who looked barely out of law school telling me the evidence was serious. Security footage from the store, they said. A witness identification, physical evidence. Claire came to see me during visiting hours, crying so hard she could barely speak. My mom flew in from Sacramento, looking 10 years older than the last time I'd seen her. Kevin visited too. Told me he'd already talked to a lawyer friend, that we'd figure this out together, that everyone knew I couldn't have done this. I believed him. I needed to believe him. My arraignment was quick. The judge set bail at $200,000, $20,000 cash. I didn't have that kind of money. My mom and Claire pooled everything they could, but we were still short. I stayed in county jail while my public defender, a woman named Amy Chen, started building my defense. The preliminary hearing was 3 weeks later. That's when I first saw the evidence against me. The security footage was grainy but clear enough. A man in a dark hoodie and jeans, face partially visible, walked into the store at 8:03 p.m. He browsed for a few minutes, then approached the counter, pulled out a knife, demanded money. When the clerk, a 62-year-old man named Thomas Wu, tried to hit a silent alarm, the robber attacked him. Vicious, brutal, the whole thing lasted 90 seconds. I watched that footage and felt my stomach drop. The man in the video, he looked like me. Same height, same build, similar walk. But it wasn't me. It couldn't be me. But then they showed the witness statement. A woman who'd been in her car across the street had come forward. She'd seen the robber leave the store, seen him run to a car parked nearby. She'd written down a partial license plate, my license plate. My car had been parked outside Kevin and Lauren's house that night. I hadn't driven it anywhere, but somehow my plate number matched what this witness had written down. Amy tried to argue that partial plates weren't reliable, that the witness could have been mistaken. But the prosecution had more. They'd found the hoodie in my apartment, in my closet, with traces of the victim's blood on it. Never seen that hoodie before in my life. Someone had planted it there. Someone had set me up. But who would do that, and why? The prosecution's case was simple. I needed money. I'd gotten greedy after my promotion, wanted more. So I'd committed a robbery, thinking I'd get away with it because I had an alibi. A casual dinner with friends where no one would remember exact times. It was circumstantial, but it was compelling. Amy told me we needed witnesses who could verify exactly where I was at 8 p.m. that Sunday. Time-stamped evidence. Something concrete. That's where Kevin came in. He was my alibi. We'd been at his house watching the Seahawks play the Rams. The game had started at 5:20 p.m. I'd arrived around 5 p.m., left around 10:30. Lauren had made chili. We'd had some beers. I remembered it clearly because Russell Wilson had thrown 3 interceptions and Kevin had been yelling at the TV all night. Kevin agreed to testify. Said he'd tell the jury exactly what happened, that there was no way I could have robbed that store because I was on his couch the entire evening. Lauren would corroborate it. It was airtight. The trial started in March, 4 months after my arrest. I'd been in jail the entire time, watching my life fall apart from behind bars. Claire had stopped visiting after the first month. My mom told me she'd gotten back together with an ex-boyfriend. It hurt, but I understood. Who wants to wait for someone accused of beating an elderly man half to death? Kevin visited regularly, though, every week. Sometimes twice a week. He'd bring me books, tell me about work, about Lauren. He'd promise me that when this was over, we'd take a trip somewhere, celebrate my freedom. He was the only person besides my mom who still believed in me. The prosecution went first. They presented the video, the witness testimony, the hoodie. They brought in Thomas Wu, who identified me as his attacker. I watched him point at me from his wheelchair, his hands still shaking from nerve damage, and I felt sick. That man had been brutalized, but not by me. Then came the knife. They'd never found it, but Wu had described it in detail. 8-inch blade, black handle, serrated edge. The prosecution showed photos of similar knives from my apartment. I'd never owned a knife like that, but they'd found 3 in my kitchen that they said showed I had access and familiarity with bladed weapons. It was absurd. Everyone has kitchen knives, but the jury listened carefully. I could see some of them looking at me with disgust. In their eyes, I wasn't a software engineer with a clean record. I was a violent criminal who'd nearly killed an old man for $600. When Amy's turn came, she did her best. She pointed out inconsistencies in the witness's description. She noted that the blood on the hoodie was a tiny amount, easily transferred if someone had touched Wu's clothes and then touched the hoodie. She argued that my complete lack of criminal history, my stable job, my community ties, none of it fit the profile of someone who'd commit such a brutal crime. But we needed more than reasonable doubt. We needed proof I wasn't there. We needed Kevin. He took the stand on day 6 of the trial. I remember watching him walk up, thinking how nervous he looked, but that made sense. Testifying is stressful even when you're telling the truth. The prosecutor questioned him first, and Kevin confirmed that, yes, he was my best friend. Yes, we were very close. Yes, he was aware I'd been arrested. Then Amy stood up for redirect. This was it. This was where Kevin would tell the jury I'd been with him all evening, that I couldn't possibly have committed the robbery. Amy asked him directly. Mr. O'Brien, where was the defendant on Sunday, November 12th, between the hours of 7 and 9 p.m.? Kevin looked at me. For the first time since taking the stand, our eyes met, and in that moment I saw something in his expression that made my blood run cold. He took a breath. Then he said he wasn't with me. The courtroom went completely silent. Amy froze. I'm sorry. Could you repeat that? Kevin's voice was steady. He wasn't at my house that night. I told him I'd say he was because he's my friend, but it's not true. He left around 7:30, said he had to run an errand. I couldn't breathe. This wasn't happening. This couldn't be happening. Amy tried to recover. Mr. O'Brien, you previously told the defense that. I know what I said. Kevin's hands were shaking now, but his voice stayed firm. I lied because I didn't want to believe he'd do something like this, but I can't lie under oath. I can't commit perjury to protect him. The prosecutor jumped in. And what time did the defendant return? Around 10, maybe 10:30. Did he say where he'd been? No. I asked, but he just said he'd taken care of something. He seemed off, nervous. Did you notice anything unusual about his appearance? Kevin hesitated, then nodded. His clothes were different. He'd been wearing a gray shirt when he arrived. When he came back, he was wearing a black hoodie I'd never seen before. The gallery erupted. The judge banged his gavel. I was on my feet, screaming, "You're lying. Kevin, what are you doing? Tell them the truth." The bailiffs grabbed me, forced me back into my chair. My lawyer was demanding a recess. The jury was staring at Kevin, then at me, then back at Kevin. And through it all, Kevin sat there with his head down, refusing to look at me. The judge called a recess. In the holding room, Amy was frantic. What the hell just happened? He was supposed to be your alibi. I couldn't speak. I was shaking so hard my teeth were chattering. Kevin he'd just destroyed me, my best friend, the person I trusted more than anyone. He'd gotten on that. Stand and told the jury I was guilty. But why? Why would he do this? The trial continued for 2 more days, but it didn't matter. Kevin's testimony had sealed my fate. The prosecution painted me as a manipulator who tried to coerce his best friend into lying under oath. The jury deliberated for 3 hours, guilty on all counts. Sentencing was 2 weeks later, 15 years. The judge said my attempts to corrupt witnesses and obstruct justice had eliminated any possibility of leniency. My mom sobbed in the gallery. Kevin wasn't there. I was transferred to the state penitentiary in Salem, maximum security because apparently I was violent and dangerous. The first 6 months were the hardest. I kept replaying Kevin's testimony in my mind, trying to understand what had happened. Had someone threatened him? Blackmailed him? Or had I been wrong about him all these years? I tried writing him letters. He never responded. Lauren didn't either. It was like they'd vanished from my life completely. My mom visited monthly. She never stopped believing I was innocent, even when I started to doubt it myself. Prison does that to you. Makes you question everything you know about yourself. Maybe I had done it. Maybe I'd blocked it out somehow. Maybe I was exactly what everyone said I was, but no, I knew the truth. I'd been set up. And Kevin was part of it. I spent my first year inside trying to figure out how. I requested copies of my case files, read through every piece of evidence, every testimony. There had to be something, some clue about who really robbed that store and why they'd framed me. Then I caught a break. One of my cellmates, a guy named Lewis who was serving time for fraud, looked over my files. He'd been an accountant before his arrest, had an eye for financial irregularities. He noticed something in the discovery documents I'd missed, the convenience store that was robbed. It was owned by a small corporation, and one of the board members was an accountant named Kevin O'Brien. My Kevin O'Brien, Lewis helped me dig deeper. We filed Freedom of Information requests, combed through public records. And slowly a picture emerged. The store was failing. It had been losing money for 2 years. The owners were facing bankruptcy, but there was one way out. Insurance fraud. Stage a robbery, collect the payout, and blame it on someone who couldn't defend themselves. Someone like me. Kevin hadn't just set me up. He'd planned it. He'd used his position to orchestrate the whole thing. The robbery was fake. Or at least the robber was someone Kevin had hired. They'd made sure to match my description, to use my car's plate number to plant evidence in my apartment. And when it came time to testify, Kevin had flipped the script, made it look like I'd tried to make him lie, which only made me look more guilty. But why me? Why his best friend? That answer came from another unexpected source. About 18 months into my sentence, I got a letter from Claire. She'd heard I was trying to prove my innocence and wanted to help. She told me something I'd never known. Kevin had been in love with her. Before I'd even met Claire, Kevin had asked her out. She turned him down, said she didn't see him that way. Then a year later, she met me through a mutual friend, and we'd hit it off. Kevin had never said a word about his history with her. Claire said he'd seemed fine with it at first. But over time, she'd noticed him watching her during game nights, making comments about how I didn't deserve her, getting too drunk and saying things he'd apologize for later. She'd mentioned it to Lauren once, and Lauren had brushed it off, said Kevin was just protective, that he'd get over it, but he hadn't gotten over it. And when I got that promotion, when my life started getting even better while he was stuck in middle management at an accounting firm, something in him had snapped. So he'd destroyed me, taken everything I had, put me in prison where I'd rot while he stayed free. I filed an appeal. My mom hired a private investigator to look into Kevin's connection to the convenience store. We found more evidence, financial records showing Kevin had received a consulting fee the month after my conviction, emails between him and the store owners discussing resolving the insurance matter. But appeals take years. The wheels of justice move slowly when you're trying to prove your innocence from inside a cell. Then 3 years into my sentence, something unexpected happened. Thomas Wu died. He'd never fully recovered from his injuries. The attack had left him with chronic pain, PTSD, mobility issues. His family said he'd basically been waiting to die. And on a Thursday in April, his heart gave out. At his funeral, his daughter gave a eulogy. My mom attended. She'd been visiting Wu regularly, trying to convince him I wasn't the man who'd hurt him. She said Wu's daughter mentioned something strange during the service. She said her father had been troubled in his final weeks, that he'd wanted to tell someone something important but was afraid. My investigator, a woman named Patricia Gaines, followed up. She visited Wu's family, explained she was working on my case. Wu's daughter was hesitant at first, but eventually she showed Patricia something. A letter. Wu had written it a week before he died but never sent it. In the letter, Wu confessed that he'd lied in court. The police had shown him a photo lineup and he'd picked me because the detective had pressured him. Said they had solid evidence I was the guy, and Wu would be helping put a dangerous criminal away. Wu was old, traumatized, scared, so he'd identified me even though he wasn't certain. But after the trial, Wu had started having doubts. He'd watched news coverage of my conviction, heard people talking about what a good person I'd seemed to be. He'd looked me up online, seen my LinkedIn, my life before the arrest. And he'd realized. He'd sent an innocent man to prison. The guilt had eaten him alive for 3 years. In his letter, he said he was sorry, that he should have spoken up sooner, that he hoped his confession could help me now. Patricia filed for an immediate appeal based on new evidence. The letter was authenticated by Wu's family and his doctor. Combined with the financial evidence linking Kevin to the store, we finally had enough to demand a new trial. The hearing was scheduled for 6 months later. I'd been in prison for 3.5 years at that point. 3.5 years of my life gone, stolen by someone I'd called my brother. Kevin was subpoenaed to appear. So was Lauren. So were the convenience store owners. The night before the hearing, I couldn't sleep. This was it. Either I'd be exonerated or I'd spend the next 11 years in this cell. I'd be 41 when I got out, middle-aged, unemployable, alone. I walked into that courtroom in chains. Saw my mom in the gallery, her hair completely gray now. Saw Patricia sitting with my new lawyer, a criminal defense attorney named Raymond Torres who specialized in wrongful convictions. And I saw Kevin. He looked terrible. Thinner, older, like he hadn't slept in months. Lauren wasn't with him. I later learned they'd divorced 6 months after my conviction. She'd found out about his role in the frame-up and left him. Took their savings and moved to California. The hearing took 2 days. Patricia presented Wu's letter, the financial records, testimony from a handwriting expert confirming the letter's authenticity. She brought in a forensic accountant who walked through Kevin's financial connection to the store and the suspicious insurance payout. Then Raymond called Kevin to the stand. This was the moment I'd been waiting for. 3 years of rage, betrayal, confusion. All of it focused on the man sitting 15 feet away from me. Raymond didn't waste time. Mr. O'Brien, you testified at original trial that the defendant left your house on the night of the robbery. Was that testimony true? Kevin's lawyer objected, but the judge overruled. Kevin had to answer. No, the word was barely a whisper. So you committed perjury? Yes. Why? And that's when Kevin broke completely, started crying right there on the stand. Because I hated him. I hated how perfect his life was, how easy everything came to him. I worked twice as hard and got half as much. And Claire. He didn't even know I'd liked her first. He just swooped in and took her because that's what he did. He took everything. The courtroom was dead silent. Raymond pressed on. So you decided to frame him for armed robbery? The store owners came to me. They were going under, needed an insurance payout. I told them I knew someone who'd make a perfect fall guy, someone whose life I wanted to ruin. I gave them his description, his license plate number. My cousin wore the hoodie, did the robbery. I planted it in his apartment the week before. I thought I'd finally be free of him. And Thomas Wu's identification. I knew the police would pressure him. Old man, traumatized, suggestible. I counted on it. And your testimony, Kevin looked at me then, really looked at me for the first time in years. I wanted to see his face when he realized I'd betrayed him. I wanted him to feel what I'd been feeling every day of our friendship. I don't remember what happened next. My lawyer told me later that I screamed something, that the bailiffs had to restrain me, that the judge had to call a recess because the courtroom had erupted. But I remember Kevin's face. The way he just sat there, tears streaming down his cheeks, looking at me like he expected me to understand. Like I was supposed to sympathize with him. The judge's ruling came the next day. My conviction was overturned. All charges dropped. I was officially innocent. Kevin was arrested on charges of perjury, conspiracy to commit fraud, and obstruction of justice. The store owners were charged too. Kevin's cousin, the one who'd actually done the robbery, had disappeared. Probably fled the country years ago. I walked out of that prison on a Tuesday afternoon in September. 4 years minus 3 weeks. That's how long I'd been inside. 1,438 days. My mom picked me up. We didn't talk much on the drive home. What was there to say? I'd lost 4 years. Lost Claire, lost my career, lost any sense of security I'd ever had. The state would compensate me eventually. Maybe $50,000 a year for wrongful imprisonment. Blood money. Kevin's trial was 8 months later. I attended every day. Watched him sit there in his own defendant's chair looking small and broken. He pled guilty to everything, got 7 years, eligible for parole in 4. He'll be out by the time he's 42. He'll get to rebuild his life, find a new career. Maybe even find someone new. Thomas Wu doesn't get that. His family doesn't get that, and neither do I. I'm 34 now, living with my mom because I can't afford my own place. Working at a call center because no tech company will touch me with a criminal record, even an overturned one. Single because how do you explain to someone on a first date that you spent 4 years in prison for a crime you didn't commit? Sometimes I think about Kevin, wonder if he's sorry, really sorry. Or if he just regrets getting caught. I think about all the moments I missed, all the moments he stole from me. Claire got married last year. I saw it on social media. She looked happy. I was happy for her, but I'll always wonder what might have been. People ask me if I'm bitter, if I'm angry. And the truth is, I don't know anymore. I was angry for a long time. Rage was the only thing that kept me going in prison. But now that I'm out, now that Kevin's behind bars, I just feel empty. He was my best friend. I would have done anything for him. And he destroyed me because I had something he wanted. Because he couldn't stand seeing me happy. That's what betrayal really is. It's not just the lie. It's not just the crime. It's the fact that someone you loved chose to hurt you, chose to take everything from you, and did it with a smile on their face. Kevin's lying testimony put me in prison, but the real prison, the one I'm still in, is knowing that trust is a lie. That the people closest to you are capable of the worst betrayals. That you can never really know anyone. That's what he took from me. Not 4 years. My ability to believe in people, and I don't think I'll ever get that back.